Just want to bring you greetings from Jerusalem, the center of the universe, right? I'll put this here. There so I can see you better. And we are really blessed to be here. This is a wonderful country. And I like what Dr. Walson, what Pat says, that you have, it has everything here. The only thing it doesn't have is Israel. And sometimes it seems like we don't have much there in Israel, but we've got Israel. And it really is a privilege to be there. It's just amazing how God led us. I just feel like the moment that I found, oh, I shouldn't say I found the Lord. You know, He was seeking me all that time. But the moment that I received Him or accepted Him, it's just been such an amazing life with God. You know what I mean? How He just grabs a hold of us and then just starts to put things back together and lead us. I'd love to share my whole testimony with you, but I can't because we just don't have the time. But just briefly, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home in Canada. And even though Radek and I came from such very different backgrounds, you know, he was raised in a communist country in Poland, and I was raised in Canada, which is, you know, very comfortable, and we don't know anything about hardship and very different upbringings, and yet we found that unity through the Messiah, you know, where there's no Jew, there's no Gentile, we're just one in the Messiah. And so that's been wonderful. It's just wonderful that God found somebody for me that had the same heart for Israel as I did. I didn't when I was growing up. I really didn't. You know, and I went through a period of rebellion where I didn't care about God, I didn't care about Judaism, I didn't care about Israel or anything. But once I met the Lord and I started to read the Bible, just things started to stir up in me again. And I did take a trip there while my life was still a big, big mess. My parents sent me to Israel with a group of young Jewish people. And one of the things that really stands out in my mind is when I went to what they call the Western Wall, the Kotel, and I just had such an incredible experience there, even though I wasn't a believer at the time. And I was just, you know, we were just the kids, we were just the gang, and we were just walking. I didn't have a sense of the holiness of the place, that it was the remnant of the temple of God, and nothing like that. I just went walking up there, and all of a sudden, boom, it's just like something hit me, and I started to just weep, and I just put my hand up to the stones, those ancient stones, you know, and I just put my whole, I pushed, you know. Sometimes as Jewish people, we can be pushy sometimes, you know, and I just pushed through all those women, because the women and the men are segregated, and I got my elbows in there, and I just had to touch those stones. And I did, and I just laid my whole face on that wall, and I just wept, and you know, and I didn't even know what it was. I think now I know that it was, I really feel like it was like Abba was welcoming me home, and I didn't even know it. I didn't know my Abba. I knew about Daniel, I knew about Joshua, I knew all the little stories that good Jewish kids should know, but I didn't know my Abba. Because I didn't know the way to Him. Because there's only one way. And that's through the Messiah. And it was through, you know, as Radek said, God really had to squeeze him. And it was the same with me. I was just living like the world. I was living in the world. It was one relationship after another. I was seeking God in mysticism and New Age and relationships. And like I said, looking for God, looking for love in all the wrong places. Because I needed that unconditional love of God to fill me up, and I couldn't find it. Wherever I looked, I was getting more and more and more broken, and until I think God just had to wrestle me to the ground, where I had nowhere else to go, I had nowhere else to turn. And the book of Hosea really spoke to me, where God says that he had to hedge her about and then woo her back to Himself. And that's what He did. He took everybody else away from me, and I was really abandoned. I was abandoned and I was betrayed. And that's where I was, and I was so bitter, and I had nowhere else to turn. And that's where it was somebody, a Christian. Two things happened. One was that a Christian gave me a New Testament that had the Psalms and the Proverbs in it. And I started to read those Psalms, and I started to read about David and how he was betrayed and how he was afraid and he was angry and he was, and in all of that he turned to God. And the one that really got me says that it's better to trust in the Lord than to trust in man. It's even better to trust in the Lord than to trust in princes. And all my life I'd been seeking something, and I'd been trusting in man, and maybe even who I thought was like a prince, But I was not finding life there. It was only leading to death. And until I learned to trust in the Lord. And the other thing that happened is that when I had been abandoned and betrayed, there was a faithful Christian who, of course, didn't know that I was Jewish, because if anybody told me about Jesus before, I would just say, I'm Jewish. And they'd go, oh, sorry, and run away, And, but this time, there was just nowhere else to go. Plus, she didn't know that I was Jewish. So she just said, I just want to tell you something. I want to tell you that Jesus loves you. And he will never leave you, and he will never forsake you. And even if everybody else has abandoned you or betrayed you or lied to you, he will never do that. He will never lie to you. He will never betray you. He will never abandon you. And that's what I needed to hear after so much brokenness in my life and so much lack of faithfulness. I needed to hear that there was somebody who would be not some cosmic force, consciousness, there was somebody who I could count on, who would be faithful to me no matter what. And even today, even as I just sat in a room in a moment of quiet, and I thought about that again, and I thought about how often I deserved that the Lord should have left me again. He didn't. He has just remained faithful to me through everything, through all my shenanigans and all the growing pains of growing in the Lord from a baby and falling backwards and trying again. And I believe that in the book of Ruth, as our sister here sang so beautifully, we have a picture of that faithfulness that speaks to us about Israel. And I just want to talk to you about a few minutes about that and look at the scriptures from Ruth. I think you all know the story, but I'll maybe go into it a little bit more. As you know, there was a woman named Naomi. And Naomi, the root of that word in Hebrew is pleasant. So it means she was a pleasant woman. And when you meet somebody in Israel and you shake their hand, you say, Naim meod. It means, that's very nice. It's very pleasant. It's very nice to meet you. And that Naim, Naomi, that's the same root. It means pleasant. But she lived in the land, and then she did something that I believe was maybe against the will of God. She went outside the land. She moved out of the land with her husband, her sons, and she experienced a great loss outside the land. She lost her husband. She lost both her sons. And all she had left was her 2 daughters-in-law. And I believe that Naomi can represent Israel in the sense of Israel being exiled outside the land. As you know, for their sins, they were exiled out of the land. And outside the land, they experienced so much loss, so much persecution, so many more exiles from the land, where they had to go from country to country because they were not welcome anywhere. And especially, as we know, most recently in the Holocaust, many Jewish people lost all their families. Maybe they were the only survivor. I have an uncle who's the only survivor in his whole family from the Holocaust. And many of those people are very bitter. Naomi also became a very, very bitter woman from all this loss because she blamed it on God. And many of the people of Israel that came out of the Holocaust and came back into the land, like Naomi did, they blamed all that on God. Why has God done this to me? Why did God allow this? Now, all Naomi had left was 2 daughters-in-law, and they were not Israelite women. You know, her sons married Moabites, which were actually the enemies of Israel. You know, Moab was an enemy of Israel, but they had married these Moabite women. And one was named Orpah, and the other was Ruth. And the Orpah means the back of your neck. And we see 2 different reactions in these women, right? And I believe that these 2 women, these 2 Gentile women, can, in a sense, represent the non-Jewish portion of the church, the Gentile church, that is in a covenantal relationship with Israel. See, Orpah and Ruth were covenanted to Naomi through marriage. That's a covenant, in a sense, that marriage covenant, and that's how they were in covenant. And also the Gentile church is in a covenantal relationship with Israel through the Messiah. In the book of Ephesians, it says that once you were far away and, you know, without hope, without God, strangers to the promise, outside the commonwealth of Israel. But, you know, now, through the blood of Jesus, now you who were once far away have been brought near. That means now we are all part of the commonwealth of Israel together. And part of the same covenants, and part of the promise. And now it's a covenantal relationship, really. The church and Israel is in covenant together through Jesus. Now look at the 2 reactions. There's Orpah, and Naomi says, she kisses them, and she says she wants them to go away. She tells them both to go away. She says to them both, "Turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they could be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go. I'm too old to have a husband." She's saying to them, look, there's nothing in it for you, girls. Why don't you play it smart, think of yourselves, and go on back home. You've got family there. You've got people there. You've got your own gods. You've got your own people to go back to, your own families. And at first they said no, and Naomi insisted. You know, the Jewish people can be pretty insistent at saying go away. They can be pretty good at pushing other people away, and especially Christians, because they don't trust Christians.